So, yeah, how kelp changed my life. But first, I want to say I think it is so cool that this community exists. We all have a common interest here. Also, I'm a word nerd, and I just think it's really fun that community is, common ground and unity combined. But first, I'd love to learn a little bit about you. So I want to invite you to put in the chat where your interest in kelp came from, if you feel so compelled. And then I would love to read them if you feel up to it. Oh, I'm not very good at this. Can I see the chat, Emma?
Can you see the chat? I can see the chat. I see that Levi says marine ecology and environmental DNA.
Oh, I got out of it. Okay, I couldn't see it when I had it at the. Sorry, I couldn't practice.
If you want, I can read them out loud,
Yeah,
Marie.
Emma, actually, that would be
Yeah.
amazing.
Okay, cool. So to reiterate, Levi says marine ecology and environmental DNA. Dr. Brian Hersden says marine permaculture. Ariana says, living in Nova Scotia, Canada. I started studying kelp beds for my PhD thesis. Very cool.
Awesome.
Of course, says kelp microbiology. Woohoo. Keith says scuba diving with Reef Check. Love Reef Check.
Oh, yes.
Soraya says childhood in Orange County and spending every free moment on the beach, swimming and playing in and around kelp.
Oh, I love that.
We're
Oh my
getting another one from Chris on the Sonoma County coast, worried about the abalone and related marine life. Same.
Yeah, amazing, wonderful. Well, thank you, and for reading that, Emma, too.
No problem.
That's great. I'm originally from the Midwest, um, and have been afraid of getting in the ocean. And as far as kelp goes, I didn't really know what it was until just a few years ago. And now I am free diving in kelp forests around the Channel Islands in order to gather footage to bring back to my studio to paint around. And I just want to say it is amazing where our imagination and our curiosities will take us. I love you all sharing those stories. Thank you. Okay, so let's get into my journey. So, but before, we get into my adventures of diving, I want to tell you a little backstory. So, I grew up in the middle of America, landlocked and as far away from the coast as possible in Kansas, or Missouri, but then Kansas, but yeah, Midwest. And so, before I was making paintings and sculptures inspired by kelp, I was making sculptures and paintings inspired by tall grass. So, these are some examples of my um, tall grass paintings and then some of my sculptures. I had gotten into steam bending. And so one of these you can see, I don't know if you can see my arrow pointing, but I steam bent like small, thin pieces of wood and plywood to make ribbons. Just before my move to California in 2017, I started having visions of misty shores and craggy cliffs of Land's End. I started painting dreamscapes. These began from my imagination, and they would take me to places that I'd never seen before. But then when I moved to California later, I started actually finding these locations. In 2021, I discovered that 90% of the kelp in Northern California had vanished. After learning this devastating statistic, I began my research and I learned that a lot of things, and a lot of you probably know this, but I was really enamored to learn that kelp forests sequester more carbon than any forests on land. The giant kelp can grow up to 2 feet a day. Canopies can grow over 100 feet tall. That it filters the water. It's a sanctuary for hundreds, if not thousands, of species. The list goes on.
I'm having trouble hearing Marie.
Oh, you can't hear me?
If you could speak just a little louder, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know that. So I remember walking the beach and holding the kelp and like looking at my hand through it and seeing the transparency. And I was really just like sort of curious about it. And so I started doing a lot more research, and my research led me to make art about kelp. At this time, I was preparing for a show in LA called Interconnected, and it was inspired by keystone species with a focus on water. And so this is a photo that while I was working really late one night installing the sculptures and the paintings, I ran outside to take a photo. But months before this exhibit, I found an old canvas in storage. And I had actually started making a painting inspired by like the sea floor years before, but I didn't like it. And so I tried to wipe off most of the paint and I stuck it in storage. And so I pulled this old canvas out and I drew an image on top of it of kelp. And I was working from a reference photo that my friend Lauren Nutt, who's a kelp restoration diver at the time with Reef Check, had given me. And then I wanted to also create some kind of version of kelp out of wood. You know, my background in steam bending, I've been wanting to get back into it. And so I started creating like blades of kelp out of plywood that I would cut and then steam bend. So it would go into a steam chamber for a certain amount of time and it would come out piping hot. I had to make these bends happen. But I still didn't really know what all this was going to look like, how it was all going to come together. And by the time the exhibition happened, these are the works that I put together. So the kelp painting, you can see, like maybe if you look close, especially on the bottom, the little blues coming through. That was from the painting before that I kept. But there were a lot of layers that went on top of it. And then the kelp forest, I ended up sort of engineering how I could make like the little nematocysts, the gas-filled bladders, for the kelp blades to like connect to these long pieces of rattan that I found to be really curvilinear and perfect to be like the stipe of kelp. And then they were inserted into a walnut base, and at the top they're tethered to the ceiling with a hook. So yes. So then by the end of 2021, I wanted to get closer to my beloved subject, and I took a trip to the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Yeah, if you can picture me with my face like pressed up against the glass with a camera, like this is where I took a lot of photos of just the kelp forest at the aquarium, and then came home and created these paintings inspired from that experience, and many more, but this is just like a little selection. Okay, so then around this time too, because I learned about the devastating loss of kelp, I also learned about sea trees and their hopeful efforts in restoring kelp off the coast of Palos Verdes. So I partnered with them in 2022, and I donate 10% of the proceeds from the sale of every kelp-inspired artwork towards kelp restoration, beginning with the Palos Verdes project. So the Palos Verdes project reached capacity about a year ago, and I started donating to the Kelp Carbon Science Study Project with scripts in La Jolla. And I wonder if any of you watching are part of this project. You put one in the chat. So if Emma, can you read that to me? I'd be curious if anybody is.
Yeah. So you want me to read what now?
If anybody like wants to say that they're a part of this project that's working on the kelp carbon science.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet, so maybe this is new to people.
Yeah, maybe it is new.
But maybe someone can correct us if it's not.
And I just like love telling these stories, and yeah.
No, Levi says it's new to them, and seems like it's new to everyone here.
Okay, well, great. So yeah, they're doing a lot of things at Scripps, and you know, you could find a lot more about that researchers.org. And I met Dr. Jen Smith, who's on the project, and I was like a complete fangirl. So excited to meet her. But anyway, okay, so all of this That next winter, this is now 2023, I started watching these videos that sea trees were sending me. And I was just like, would find myself just crying to these videos of the baby kelp. The footage of new growth was, yeah, from sea trees divers where they were working to help restore kelp off the coast of Palos Verdes. So these videos inspired the Golden Era paintings, working both from the footage and my imagination. These paintings were, for me, about help, about hope, and coming together to create a better world. Which leads me back to the initial exposure to kelp. So my first experience in the kelp forest. That summer of 2023 was about surrender and acceptance. I'd gone through a really big life change with the breakup, a long-term relationship, and I was having, I get really vulnerable here, but I was having a lot of panic attacks and thought that my heart would stop, going through that. And because I didn't live through it, my mantra became get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And so since I made it through, I wanted to see what else was off limits that I didn't think I could do, but maybe I could. And so, because I was afraid of cold water stopping my heart, I started doing cold plunges, starting out incrementally, and just like starting with a toe, and then until I was all the way in. Later that summer, a friend and I decided we were going to have our first experience in the kelp forest together. But she ended up unable to go last minute, so I went anyway. I was already on the boat with a plan in place. So I swam from the shore, from Santa Cruz Island, watching to see if people on the beach were looking, so I would have some witnesses in case I went missing. I was so nervous of getting tangled, and so I stayed on the edges of the forest as close to the shore as possible. But I was enchanted. When I came back to the studio, a shift happened. The Golden Era series was changing my newfound perspective. I had already painted the background of the giant kelp painting that you see on the right, but I was holding off on drawing in the kelp until my underwater experience. I felt a shift in the way that I was painting light. Pushing my limits again and following a vision I enrolled in a freediving course for that fall in Catalina. There's this joke I heard from my instructor, which feels really true, but freediving is said to be 90% mental and 10% in your head. Yeah, so and there was this first experience that I really saw everything that was going on in my head. And it was rough seas, and the waves kept coming, and I just found myself gasping for air. I thought to myself, what am I doing? Like, this is the deepest water I've ever been in. I'm so awkward with these large fins. I kept looking at the shore to make sure it was still there. I had no idea what I was doing there. Then I remembered my instructor's teachings that relaxation is key to freediving. And so I began the body scan, relaxing technique with a snorkel in my mouth, and I began to scan. As I worked my way down, relaxing my cheeks, my jaws, my shoulders, I began to notice like a silvery school of fish swimming underneath me. And I forgot all about the chaos and found myself being gently rocked by the waves instead of fighting them. It was a moment of surrender and serenity and curiosity. Amid the chaos, I found a stillness, and this was life-changing for me. These experiences ignited the Prism series. The sparkle in the kelp forest blew me away. The best way I can describe it was like seeing the Milky Way for the first time. It continues to mesmerize me above and below. So from left to right, that first painting on the left is In the Light, and it was inspired from a women group dive in San Diego. The next one was Catalina Lights, which is inspired by my second freediving course on Catalina. And then Seeing Stars, which is inspired by my first snorkeling experience of Santa Cruz Island. And then Giant Kelp, which is also inspired by my first experience of Santa Cruz. Okay, another question, if I may, Emma, for everybody.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so how many of you are divers? I want to know. Put a 1 in the chat if you are, and a 2 if you hope so someday.
Oh, there's a lot of ones. It's 3 ones right away. Oh, 4 1,
Oh,
5,
great.
6,
Awesome.
7.
All right. You got a lot of divers, you're saying? Awesome. Well, thank you.
And
Okay.
Emma's a big one too, also.
Oh yeah, me as well. Yeah.
You as well.
That's 2 ones.
Also, Marie, your volume's still very low. If you can speak up, that'd be helpful.
Okay, I'll try to be louder. Thank you. Now I'm curious where your first dive was. Feel free to add the location to chat.
Laguna Beach,
Cool.
Catalina,
Awesome. I haven't been to Laguna yet.
Ontario, Canada.
Oh.
That's cool. New Hampshire, Hawaii,
Ah,
Yucatan Peninsula. Whoa, these are really various.
I love it. Oh, thank you all.
Wrigley, Catalina, 2 harbors, sorry. Florida Keys.
Oh my gosh. I haven't yet to dive outside of
Blue Grotto in Florida.
the Kelp Forest. Amazing. Well, thank you. Okay, so that brings me to my creative process. In the spirit of being vulnerable with diving and this talk right now, I wanted to share some behind the scenes of my creative process. Bear with me because I'm going to have to switch now again. I'm really not that great at technology, but here we go. Okay. Okay, here we go. Got it. Can we see that? Everybody see that?
We can see. Can you make it larger?
Let's see.
Full screen, maybe.
Does that make it any bigger?
Maybe try next to the play button where it has like the 2 little rectangles. Does that make it larger?
I think it's just like this because it's a vertical.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Try to
All right.
remove.
Works.
Well,
And,
it'll
yeah.
just be a little small, I guess. My
Yep.
apologies. Okay. It does go back to the vertical. So this is me in the kelp forest on a dive off of Anacapa. And then this is a photo I took in Catalina. And then here we go into the process from that photo. So I am painting where I just started this new process actually where I'm working sort of like watercolor where I am using the whites, the background. So I'm starting with the white background where I used to do a whole underpainting and then paint on top of it. But as you can see, I'm just building it from the sketch that I trace onto the canvas. And so this is brand new work that I haven't shown anywhere yet that you are all seeing for the first time, which feels a little bit like showing my underwear drawer a little bit. But yeah, so this is getting closer to being finished. This is for a show that I'm participating in March at the Riviera Beach House. It's a 2-person show. I'm featuring alongside Marlene Stress, and it's put on by the Museum of Contemporary Art. So there's that. Still in process, but you see that it's probably like 90% done here. Go to the other video. So that was painting. Oh. Something's around. There it is. Okay. Can we see that?
Yeah, if you could do the green button in the upper left corner again, that would be.
That's the one. Thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Here we go. So here is the steam bending in action. So I figured out that I could use a dowel and sort of like a lathe where I'm using like a belt and disc sander to create that form. And then I'm using the spindle sander, as you see there, to create like a little inside, so it fits like a glove onto the rattan. So that part out. And then here are all the blades that I've seen bent. So this was for a sculpture that I installed last year as a part of a show in San Diego called Ebb and Flow with 4 other artists inspired by Kelp, which was with Julie Gray, Orana Poindexter, Dwight Quinn, Dr. Jen Smith, and Scripps, and myself. And was recently actually a beautiful documentary released about the exhibit by director Mary Ann Brewster. I can put that link in the chat. Okay, so now let's see that there's some we saw in the video. There it is. Sculpture process, and then you can see how I kind of build it with the sculpture where I am installing it with screws and building as I go and feeling into the flow how those blades would move. So if you'd like to follow my journey, you can find me on Instagram at Marie McKenzie Art. You can visit my website. You sign up for my monthly letter. You will hear about all my upcoming exhibits, new work, and additions that are not so far away. I'm participating in 2 group shows, March 28th, In Motion with Marlene Stress at Riviera Beach House, and May 2nd, Forest Bathing alongside Orana Poindexter and Michaela Ravenon at the 643 Project Space in Ventura. I want to say thank you so much, everyone, for taking this time to be a part of this, and for your interest in Kelp, and for being here today. Thank you, Kelp Culture, for hosting me. And I guess this opens up the questions.